Howdy and aloha, everybody. This is James with Monotalk. Very important. Going to try to keep this quick. There's some information that came out finally from somebody out there, a governor, and I'm going to go into it real quick on what's happening. So, this is important. This is probably the most important thing that's happening now that needs to have absolute and total concentration on, focus, the whole 9 yards, right? So what we're looking at right here is the CBDC system is moving, and it's not good. And what they want to implement, right, is the FedNow system. And also take over and totally control over Bitcoin, over crypto, and have their own, right? Which they're going to call FedCoin. Okay? So this is not good. This is very bad. This is the worst thing that could probably happen to any country. Right now, in my professional opinion, and just from my perspective as just John Average Man on the street, this is something that Hitler would be either very impressed with, or he would probably turn over in his grave going, what the fuck, this is crazy. But it's bad. It's beyond authoritarianism. It's beyond communism. It's way past socialism. But it's bad. So please pay attention. It's moving quick, and we need to get action on it immediately. So as I showed you, the number that you need to call, and you need to call them now, okay, is you need to call the 202-224, right, 3121, and get in touch. Get in touch with your federal, state senator. You'll probably talk to an admin or whatever, right? An intern or an admin. And let them know. No to CBDC, no to FedNow, no to FedCoin. No, this is bad. And they basically want to take away the tangible dollar, okay? And what's going to happen is I'm going to show you a video of Ron DeSantis going into detail with it. There's a few things he missed, but before we go to that, let me kind of show you what where it's at right now and what's kind of going on. So if we go, again, let me just, so you can see it. That number again is, right, and I should highlight again. Get rid of that. Why is that gray? I don't know why that's gray. That is very strange. Now it's all gray. Okay. There's the number, 202-224-3121. Get in touch with your senator or your House of Representative ASAP. All right, so this is a quick view of basically what's going on. There's a little more, but this is a very well done segment.
The Federal Reserve Bank announces a July launch for their new FedNow service, which was first announced in October of 2021. The too big to fail banks and all the large processors are already on board, and so is the U.S. Treasury. The first week of April, the Federal Reserve begins the FedNow pilot program for early adopters to become certified participants to help the Fed confirm readiness for their July launch. FedNow is an instant payment processing system that seeks to be the base of all digital transactions, acting as an umbrella company to manage all financial payments. This has been shown to be the gateway to a central bank digital currency, CBDC. FedNow is much like the Reserve Bank of India's instant payment system, the Unified Payments Interface, or UPI. UPI has had huge success in converting rural communities into a complete cashless society. According to the International Monetary Fund, UPI democratized the payment system and paved the way for central bank digital currencies. Central bank instant payment processing is also how the Central Bank of Nigeria introduced its CBDC.
From now, Yellen, Federal Reserve piece of poop, just a steaming pile of poop, Janet Yellen. This guy, I freaking don't know his name, congressman, he knows what's going on. He's trying to get her to expose basically what they're doing. And this is a really good question. I would have asked it a little bit different, but it's very well, but it shows you where they're at, because they're taking care of only certain banks to bail out when banks start failing, and there's supposed to be a bunch more failing. Community small banks will start to disappear if this continues, right? And they'll only bail out the banks that are connected to the hip of the central banks, the large, gigantic banks, which are connected to the hip of, you know who, the World Economic Forum.
The banking issues we're dealing with on it. Will the deposits in every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of their size, be fully insured now? Are they fully recovered? Every bank, every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of the size of the deposit, will they get the same treatment that SVBP just got or Signature Bank just got?
A bank only gets that treatment if a majority of the FDIC board, a supermajority of the Fed board, and I, in consultation with the president, determine that the failure to protect uninsured depositors would create systemic risk and significant economic and financial consequences.
So what is your plan?
And we made that determination.
Right.
So what she's saying is only a certain group of us from the Fed have the ability to determine what bank's getting what, right? And that is very bad alone. And then, of course, you have Dementia Pedo Joe that's going to sign off on it, which is even worse because he's just the puppet, the greatest puppet that has sit in the Oval Office in the history of the fucking planet. They're all puppets, but anyway, here we go.
So what is your plan to keep large depositors from moving their funds out of community banks into the big banks? We have seen the mergers of banks over the past decade. I'm concerned you're about to accelerate that by encouraging anyone who has a large deposit in a community bank to say, we're not going to make you whole, but if you go to one of our preferred banks, we will make you whole. Seeing the mergers of banks over the past decade, I'm concerned you're about to accelerate that by encouraging anyone who has a large deposit in a community bank to say, we're not going to make you whole, but if you go to one of our preferred banks, we will make you whole at that point.
Look, I mean, that's certainly not something that we're encouraging.
That is happening right now.
Look, I mean, that's certainly not something that we're encouraging.
That is happening right now.
That is happening because depositors are concerned about the bank failures that have happened and whether or not other banks could also
No,
fail.
it's happening
And
because you're fully insured no matter what the amount is if you're in a big bank. You're not fully insured if you're in a community bank.
Well, you're not fully insured. And
You
the
were.
and whether or not other banks could also
No,
fail.
it's happening
And
because you're
it's-
fully insured no matter what the amount is if you're in a big bank. You're not fully insured if you're in a community bank.
Well, you're not fully insured. And
You
big-
were at Signature, and
the
it just barely met that threshold. You were at Signature.
Well, we felt that there was a serious risk of contagion that could have brought down and triggered runs on many banks. And that's something, given that our judge.
Everything they're doing is making it happen anyway. The run on the banks or the banks dropping is because of what they created, the inflation, the money that they've made out of nowhere. All of this is all pre-planned, all in the system, all in the program. And remember the word agenda, because a governor here is about to say the word agenda many times once I bring that up.
Management is that the banking system overall is safe and sound. Depositors should have confidence in the system, and we took these actions.
So there's a
to
special
discourage
assessment that's been done
contagion.
on community banks in my state and all banks across the country. Was there any discussion that that special assessment would only apply to the larger banks, or was it always assumed the special assessment would cover every bank, including rural banks in my state?
I think I'm not certain what the rule.
That's bullshit. You're the highest level of banking of this country, right? And you're just a corporation anyway. And you don't know? She knows exactly what the fuck is going on. This is all part of the fucking plan. Crash the little banks, put all the money in the big banks, start the CBDC, and then those more.
Rules are around that. That's for the FDIC to determine.
It has been reported publicly that SVB had a large number of Chinese investors that are there, including some that were companies directly connected to the Chinese Communist Party. Will those individuals, companies, entities, and investors that are Chinese investors be made whole based on assessments in my banks in Oklahoma? So what I'm asking is, will my banks in Oklahoma pay a special assessment to be able to make Chinese investors whole from Silicon Valley Bank?
Uninsured investors will be made whole in that bank, and I suppose that could include foreign depositors, but I don't believe there's any legal basis to discriminate among uninsured.
I get it, but
depositors.
I'm just saying my community banks are going to pay this additional fee. It is always fascinating to me as well, the conversation that taxpayers are being made whole in this, that taxpayers are not going to have any kind of consequence on this. I'm sure my bankers are going to be very excited to know they no longer pay taxes.
Yeah, this is insanity. All right, so let's jump over here. Hopefully you're getting this. This is just fucking crazy. So this guy came out yesterday, day before. I think it was this morning or yesterday or sometime. And he said, I'm calling on the legislature to prohibit the use of the so-called CBDC in Florida, protecting Floridians from government surveillance and control of their personal finances. And somebody else who's also aboard with that, right, is Tulsi Gabbard. And she's clearly indicated, and she's made this known now for a day or two, till the 16th. This is a while back. This is a few days ago, 5 or 6 days ago. The cashless society espoused by the WEF elite is a society of surveillance, where every transaction is tracked, monitored, and controlled by a few powerful entities that have the ability to freeze your accounts. For who knows fucking why. Which is that'll be laid out later. We must stand up for our financial autonomy and the right to privacy, right? That's huge. I don't see anybody else besides these two people really bringing this up, which is extremely alarming to me. And then what's on this one? When I just played. And then I say, where's DeSantis said no to the CBDC, but my question is, where's Trump on this? Right? Where's Trump? Is he really, I'm just not hearing anything. Well, I guess he's getting arrested today, but he's never really brought this up. And the CBDC system has been around for a long time. I've been talking about it pretty much forever. This little meme thing, whatever you want to call it, I've created this middle or late 2020. The orchestrators and they're all around, Bill Gates, BlackRock, World Economic Forum, G7, G20, CDC, NIH, Council on Foreign Relations, all a part of it. Council on Foreign Relations, right? The World Health Organization. You know, just they're all a part of this, and their goals are. They've laid it out. It's on their fucking website. It's everywhere. They're doing it, right? Mass social control, mass depopulation, world central banking. The world central banking is the last straw. They're moving it at warp speed right now. I think they're getting really, really paranoid. This is what I'm seeing. The thing that I'm concerned about is we already know what party's totally all in with this process, right? We know, so we're really concerned. Now we need to be concerned on who else is in with this. And I'm sure Mitch McConnell's in there, and Joe Manchin, and a few others, right? Tillis, et cetera. The people, the ones that I believe that didn't like Tucker showing J6 reality to everybody. But let me just go to this, and this is DeSantis. And let me see if I'm missing something here. Yeah, I already should have told you. Okay, so right here, we're going to jump to DeSantis, right? And I'm going to put that in the screen so you can see it good. And this is nowhere on mainstream media. They're on a few stations you might see it, but they don't really bring up the details and what he's talking about. They kind of glaze over it. I've been to a few channels now. Mainstream MSNBC, of course, is not. Of course, is not. But anyway, let's get to this and just listen to us. It's about 10 minutes, but it's important that you hear the whole thing and what this man's trying to do, or what he's trying to expose, which I think is very, extremely important. Extremely, extremely important. All right. And that would be pressing play.
So if you look at what's happening with our economy, we had, starting in 2020, massive fiscal stimulus, and that ended up being trillions and trillions of dollars over a couple years. The Fed reduced interest rates to basically zero, pumped a lot of money into the economy, and that led to inflation. And I think almost anyone who was looking at what was going on over the last many years would have said that inflation was the likely result of those policies. Now, the Fed itself, when it was clear that we were seeing an inflationary upturn, said that it was transitory, that this was something that would just work itself out. And so they did not act when they should have. They got behind the curve, and so as inflation continued to spike and continue to be a huge problem for our economy, they responded by hiking rates very, very rapidly, very, very quickly. That's done a lot of things to hurt a lot of people, but it has put a lot of pressure on the banking sector in particular. And so we had recently this issue with the Silicon Valley Bank, which was bailed out. I mean, this is a bank that had invested in a lot of long-term bonds that were no longer profitable because the interest rates have gone up. They also did things like focused a lot on ESG and DEI and didn't do appropriate risk management. So they ended up being in a situation where they were insolvent. And so the Fed, because this is a bank that is very politically connected with people in Silicon Valley, the Fed and the Treasury Department bailed it out. Now, they try to say it's not a bailout because they say it's going to be paid for by banking fees. But who pays the banking fees? Customers. So you're going to pay more for fees to do banking in order to give the Silicon Valley people a bailout. Now, there was not a systemic risk to the economy from this one bank, but they were politically connected. And here's the thing. When you engage in those types of policies like we've seen over many years, someone is going to have to pay the bill. Ultimately, the bill comes due. And so what they've now done in the last couple weeks is they've printed another $300 billion and injecting that into the economy. Now, the problem with that is they spent the last year trying to take money out of the economy with their raising interest rates very rapidly. And so just what they've done since you've seen the hiccups in the banking is they've wiped out half of the reduction in the money supply that they had worked for the last year to achieve. all to be able to benefit some of these politically connected banks. And so what they're doing is they're, quote, fighting inflation and managing the economy in ways that make it more difficult for you, for average people, but are shielding the banks from the pain associated with the policies. And my question is, are you interested in giving these economic central planners more power over our economy, more power over your daily life and your economic activity? And I answer that question, HE double hockey sticks. No, we cannot have that happening. And so that's why we're here today, because we've seen a lot of mismanagement from the economic central planners. It's just by nature. You cannot do this effectively without there being major costs to pay. And so some want to increase power to these organizations such as the Federal Reserve. And so last year, President Biden issued an executive order to explore the creation of a U.S. central bank digital currency, effectively converting the dollar into a centralized digital currency. And this is different than things like cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. A centralized digital currency is directly controlled and issued by the government to consumers. And it provides the government with a direct view of all consumer activities. And so this is something that is being proposed as somehow being environmentally sustainable, a way to increase access to consumers who lack the means to join a traditional bank. But as we've come to learn, any way they can get into society to exercise their agenda, they will do it. So what the central bank digital currency is all about is surveilling Americans and controlling behavior of Americans. And how do we know? Because we've seen this in other parts of the world. Look at no further than China to see the impacts of centralized digital currency. The People's Bank of China uses its central bank to monitor citizen behavior, allowing for the surveillance of spending habits and to cut off access to goods and services. You also see things in the Bahamas, where they've instituted caps on CBDC holdings and transactions. In Nigeria, central bank capped ATM withdrawals to forcibly push the use of their digital currency in lieu of physical currency. And I don't even need to think here, what are they going to want to do? These ESG factors. You go and buy gasoline. If you bought too much gasoline, they just won't allow you to use this to make a transaction. Who knows whether they would let you buy a firearm or things that they disapprove of. And so you're opening up a major can of worms, and you're handing a central bank huge amounts of power. And they will use that power. I think if we've seen anything over the last 4 or 5 years is if they can do their agenda, they will do their agenda in any way.
The World Economic Forum.
Think about some of the stuff that's happened with the whole banking situation. You know, the deposits are protected by law up to $250,000. Above that, it's not protected. Congress never changed that law, and yet somehow the administration, the Fed, the Treasury, they're removing that cap for some of these banks. And so the law is not really going to be an impediment to them if they can get the central bank digital currency. They will use that in ways that benefit their agenda. So today, we're here because we now recognize
the World Economic Forum
an effort across America to backdoor provisions for the use of central bank digital currency through individual state uniform commercial codes, UCC. Uniform commercial codes intended to provide for standard governing laws for commercial transactions across state lines, and is set by an independent commission of, quote, experts to seek uniformity in state laws. Now, while legislation to apply recent recommended changes to the UCC has been introduced in about 20 states, no bill has been introduced in the Florida legislature, and if they were to pass a bill, I would veto that bill. However, given the risks associated with the federally sanctioned centralized bank of digital currency, today I'm here to call on the legislature to pass legislation to expressly forbid the use of CBDC as money within Florida's Uniform Commercial Code. This will ensure that Florida continues to be a state that supports innovation in the financial sector through the market while protecting against government surveillance over your personal finances. But our legislation shouldn't stop there. Given the continued increase in Chinese influence in worldwide affairs and increase in plans to adopt CBDC worldwide, our legislation also prohibits any CBDC issued by a foreign reserve or government-sanctioned central bank. This will ensure that any effort to adopt a worldwide digital currency will never occur in the free state of Florida. And finally, calling on like-minded states like Florida to adopt similar legislation into their uniform commercial codes and to reject any changes to their uniform commercial code that would formally recognize a central bank digital currency. And I've already spoken with Lieutenant Governor of Texas, who's ahead of the Senate in Texas. I do believe Texas is going to do something similar to what Florida does. And if we can get a groundswell of states to say no, we are not going to turn over this power to you. I mean, look, ultimately, cash is king. I mean, if you can hold it in your hand, you have power over there to what Florida does. And if we can get a groundswell of states to say no, we are not going to turn over this power to you. I mean, look, ultimately, cash is king. I mean, if you can hold it in your hand, you have power over that. The minute it's all digitized, somebody else is going to have control over that. And it's just a question of, are they going to let you live your life? Or are they going to decide to do things to circumvent what you want to do? And think about what we've already seen. In Canada, you remember when the truckers were protesting the vax mandates, you know, they had banks, some of the government seized, froze some of their banks. You had charities that were trying to help these guys, and that was frozen. So
Let's not forget PayPal. That was a great example. If you didn't follow the guideline, the rule of law, they stole money. They actually stole your money.
we've already seen government really overstep its bounds as it is in the banking situation and financial sector that we have now. Can you imagine if we went to something like a central bank digital currency? So I'm glad that we're at the tip of the spear on this. I think it's really important that states stand up to fight back against some of the things that are going on, well, most of the things that are going on right now in Washington, because they don't have your best interests at heart. They have their own power at heart. They have their own agenda.
World Economic Forum agenda. Agenda 2030, 201, 21, whatever. This is their agenda
That they're looking to advance. And so I think this will be great legislation. I look forward. We're already talking to the leaders in the legislature. I think this is something that is going to happen, and I look forward to being able to sign it into law later this year. Okay.
Hovering over, we got balloons flying around. It's just all kinds of stupid shit. And then Trump, is going to jail, I guess, today. I don't know if he's already gone. But I don't see, like I said, I don't see him saying anything about this. And if you find that he's actually against and with DeSantis on this, that would be great. If he's not, and he's questioning, he doesn't know if he's kind of naive about it or acts like it, then he is fucking part of it. Let's just put that on. Let's just put that fucking ace of spades on the table. All right. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for paying attention. Again, the number you need to call and talk. I don't care if you're in a blue state, red state, purple state, whatever fucking green state you're in. All right, the number you need to call. Talk to your senator. Talk to your House of Representative, on the federal level, and talk to the admins or the interns there, and let them know you don't want this. You just flat out don't want it. And if you want to ask if they don't know what you're talking about, let them know, because now you know what's going on. This is your information right here. So you want to call the number 202-224-3121. I know that number by heart because I call all the time. I make fucking calls. I protest. I do it. This shit's coming down, and you've got to do something about it. It is time. There's nothing. If we lose this fight, they control everything. And they, meaning the World Economic Forum, ETAL, everybody that's associated with them, BlackRock, Vanguard. I mean, you just name it, CFR, they're all of them. And it's just, we don't want to give this kind of power to them. These unelected, parasitic elite. These people, are dictating policy and laws, and you just have the perfect puppet, or just another puppet, or just like the best puppet they'd ever had, which is the demented pedophile that's running the fucking country right now, which is ridiculous. Anyway, thank you for watching. This is James of Montauk. Stay on it. This is fucking super important to protect the 99%. You guys got to start bringing up that term, the 99%. Aloha.